You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramat Shemesh Israel 5777, 2017. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Devarim. At the beginning of our Parsha, Moshe Rabbeinu begins a very long speech, and he tells us some interesting things. One of the first things that he says like this: Va'omar aleichem ba'isa lemor. I said to you, this is in chapter 1, verse 9. I said to you at that time, Lo chalavadi l'seis eschem. I cannot carry you by myself. Moshe Rabbeinu is one person, the Jewish people, 600,000 people, and Moshe says, how can I be the one to carry you alone? Hashem, next verse, Hashem Elokeichem hirba eschem, v'nchem hayom kechochvei hashamayim l'roiv. Hashem, your God, has made you great, has made you many, and today you are like the stars of the heavens, so numerous in number. Verse 11. Hashem Elokei avosechem Yosef aleichem kachem elef pa'amim. Hashem, the God of your fathers, should add upon you many times, 1,000 times. Yivarech eschem, and he should bless you, kasher diber lochem, as he has indeed spoken to you. But he says, Moshe Rabbeinu goes on to describe the fact that because the Jewish people are so many, because there are so many Jewish people, so he can't do it by himself, and he therefore had to appoint, on behalf of the Jewish people, different judges at different levels, different size courts, etc. And those things that were too difficult eventually would be brought to him. But he had to give out the power, so to speak. Now, in speaking about, it's very interesting, in speaking about the greatness in number of the Jewish people, he speaks of the blessing of Hashem. He speaks of the fact that Hashem promised to the forefathers that they will be numerous, that they will be innumerable, like the stars in the heavens. And indeed at this point they are. And let's talk about the blessing. Let's talk about the blessing. The idea of blessing, the idea of the fact that the Jewish people are innumerable. They're counted like the stars. How do we get into blessings? How do we receive those blessings? How do we get to that point, to that place where we indeed are worthy of those blessings? So this is what the Medrash says. This is in Parsha Aleph, beginning of our Parsha, beginning of the Sefer Devarim, Deuteronomy, and it's in letter Yud Aleph, section 11. It says like this: Davar acher. Hashem Elokeichem hirba eschem. Hashem, your God, has made you numerous. Zeh shamar hakosov. This is what the verse says: Ashachva lechal kodshecha. I will bow down to the sanctuary of your holiness. So what is the idea? Amar Rabbi Eloi b'shem Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Rabbi Eloi said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, Kach amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'Avraham. This is what God said to Abraham, she'yigol es bana b'shtei oisios, that he's going to redeem them with 2 letters. What are the 2 letters? With the name of Hashem, which is a 2-letter name. Minayin shekach ksiv. How do we know this? Because the verse says like this: V'games hagoy asher yavodu don anochi, and also the nation that they will be in servitude to, I shall judge them. The word don, which means to judge, is 2 letters, Dalet and Nun, which actually, as the Yetz Yosef points out, if you look at there are 72, we refer to, we'll soon see, we'll talk about the 72-letter name of Hashem, which is derived from 3 psukim, 3 verses in the account of the Jewish people getting to Yam Suf as they got to the Sea of Reeds. Behind them was the Egyptians, in front of them was the water. So the verse speaks about the fact that there was a cloud that Hashem placed between the Jewish people and the Egyptians, and each of those 3 verses there has 72 letters, and from the 3 verses we derive the 72. There are 72 combinations of letters, of 3 letters from each of these 3 verses, which we won't get into in detail. But in the middle, in the 50th one, the 50th combination of letters, so you have the name which consists of the letters Dalet and Nun. That's what the Yetz Yosef brings down. So Hashem refers to the fact that he's going to be done. He's going to judge the Egyptians. He's going to give them that which, measure for measure, that which they gave to the Jewish people, the challenges that they gave. So, Kishabah le'Golam, when Hashem comes to redeem the Jewish people, Golam b'shivim u'shtayim oisiyos. Hashem, even though he originally spoke about a name of only 2 letters, when it came to the redemption itself, Hashem redeems them with the 72-letter name. So this is the first place that we see, says the Medrash, where we have a small amount, so to speak, as the Eitz Yosef says, Tzadikim omer ma'at v'oisen harbei. Those who are righteous, they speak a little bit, but they do a lot. Like Avram Avinu, Abraham, when he greets the Malach, when he greets the angels, so he says he's going to do a little bit for them, but he does a lot. He brings out a tremendous amount of food. And Hashem too, because the tzaddik and the righteous, they exemplify the behavior of God. They bring God's manifestation into the world. So Hashem too, when he speaks a little bit, so to speak, and he does a lot. He says he's going to redeem us with a 2-letter name, but he redeems us with a 72-letter name, which of course means, in trying to understand what is the idea of the names represent a manifestation of God in this world, how we perceive God, how we interact with God. So God says, I'm going to interact with the world with a 2-letter name. I'm going to only reveal so much. And then in the end, Hashem actually reveals much more. This is his humility, his modesty. Okay. That just brings down a few different ways that we see this 72 concept. Not going to get into that. Okay. Very interesting. The next section, which is the key to what's going on, or how one accesses this blessing. The blessing that we're speaking about is, it starts small, it looks like it's something small, or it's mentioned as something small, described as something small, but it becomes much more great, much greater than Hashem originally speaks about it. Blessings manifest with in a much greater fashion. We speak about the number 1,000. We'll get to that. Okay. How does that work? How do we get to that? So the Medrash says something which seems to be not connected, but it is. In fact, it's the core. Davar acher. Amar Rabbi Eloi b'shem Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. Another matter. Rabbi Eloi said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, "B'nei ma lo gila Kadosh Baruch Hu la'Avram Avinu." Why did Hashem, when he speaks about, God spoke to Avram, to Abraham, and he promised him that his children are going to end up in a strange land, strangers in a strange land, and that they're going to be in servitude, they're going to have difficulties, and in the end they're going to be released. Hashem is going to bring them out with great miracles, etc. Why does Hashem not mention to Avram Avinu, to Abraham, that he's going to give his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, the amazing manna, the amazing food which he sustained the Jewish people with in the Midbar for 40 years? Why does Avram Avinu not receive that information? Amar B'Yava Bar Kahana, Kachi Darkan Shal Tzadikim. B'Yava Bar Kahana says, this is the way of the righteous. Hashem behaves in the way that he expects the righteous to behave. They speak a little bit and they do a lot. Hashem said he's going to redeem the Jewish people, redeem them, but he doesn't mention all of the many things that he's going to do on their behalf. Davar acher. Another explanation, another depth. Why did Hashem not reveal it to them? If he would have revealed it to them, amazing thing, we need to understand what this means. But the Medrash says that if the Jewish people would have known about the Manna from before, if they would have had a Masorah, a tradition, that's what they're going to get, they would have said when they came to the Midbar, what's the big deal? We've already had this. We know about this. We've experienced this already. We ate this in Pharaoh's place. We ate this Manna. Teida lecha, should know. The Medrash says, why would you think that they would say such a thing? The Jewish people, when they were in Egypt, they were such deep slaves that they had to create bricks even without receiving any teven, without receiving the straw to create the bricks with. Nevertheless, even though they were so impoverished, they were so downtrodden, what did they say when they were in the Midbar? They said, Zacharnos Hadaga. They said, we remember the fish that we had, and the avatiach, the melons, the good old days. They remembered the good old days, right? Hashem did not want to tell them about the Manna because he didn't want them to say, we've seen this before. We know about this before. Pella, what does it mean? What is the Medrash talking about? The Manna was something that they never experienced, they never saw, they never heard of. They wouldn't have had it in Pharaoh's palace as slaves to Pharaoh. They never had it. They never would have had it. What does it mean? What does the Medrash mean that they would have said, we had this in Pharaoh's palace? needs explanation, and we need to understand how this is connected to what we're talking about here, the blessings that Hashem originally says is going to manifest his letter, the 2-letter name, but in the end he manifests with the 72-letter name. So it's connected somehow to the idea of tzaddikim amar ma'ad v'yisen harbei. The righteous speak a little bit, do a lot, like we saw, but we need to understand a deeper depth. All right, let's continue. Another statement of Rabbi Eloi in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra. This is what God said to Abraham, that God promised he's going to make his children to be many, to be great like the stars. How do we know? Shenemar, as the verse says, so shall your children be. Meaning like the stars. He took them outside, he showed them the stars, he said, your children will be like this, like the stars. When he came to bless them, when the blessings actually manifested, they became even greater than that. Right? When Hashem showed it to Avram, he said, Koi. He pointed and he said, this is how your children are going to be. There was almost a limiting, a defining that happened. That it could only be as many as the stars that you see. But when it comes to the number, so it says, L'roiv, so many, it's too innumerable to even count. Right? That's what we see, Ma'u L'roiv, Harba Arbeh. I will make them greater and greater and greater. So many. When it comes to blessings, the blessings are always greater. The blessings of Hashem, Hashem says, like we said before, he speaks a little bit, he does a lot. He says that there's going to be a number, but in the end, it's going to be much greater than that. Okay. Now, so now we get to something very interesting, which also seems not to be so clear, the connection. We definitely see, in the Psukim, we see that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, there's so many, and therefore, when it comes to judgment, when it comes to bringing you want to come and you want to understand what the halachas are, you have to go to this judge. I can't do everything myself. Everyone is waiting for me, trying to access me, trying to understand what's the right thing for them, what's the right halacha, what needs to be done. All this stuff I can't do by myself. There's so many of you. We have to create a system of judges, right? So now the Medrash goes into that point, the point of the system of judges, and tells us like this. Very interesting idea, which we also need to understand how it's connected here to the idea of blessings. Mahu Aimer, what does the verse mean when it says Tifalteni mi rive am? The verse says in Psalm chapter 18 verse 44. King David says that he wants to be released from the fighting, from the worries about those who will fight. He was a judge. King David was a judge. He was someone who they came to with their questions in halacha. And he said, I want to be released from the fighting of this nation. Allah Amar David. King David said like this. One time the verse refers to the fact that they're Rivei Am, the fighting of the nation. Sometimes it refers to Rivei Ami, the fighting of my nation. What's these two different ways of expressing this? So the Medrash says, sometimes I will have a taina on them. King David is saying, sometimes I will have something that I'm upset about, some grievance with the Jewish people. And sometimes the Jewish people will have some grievance with me. I want to be released from that. I don't want to have any grievances on them. I don't want them to have any grievances with me. Amar la Kadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem says to King David, David mata yeshelecha etzlan. You have not even become their king, and you're speaking about the fact that you're going to be responsible for them. I swear to you, Hashem says, because of your recognition of your responsibility towards them and your interest in not being any grievances, I already have appointed you to be their king. Amazing thing he says. He says, since you have made me their king, I want you to please put it in their hearts, put it in the hearts of the Jewish people, that they should listen to me, that they should hear what I'm saying, they should accept what I'm saying. The verse says, L'shema oizen yishamuli. They should use their ears to listen to me. And there's a few things we need to understand here in this Medrash, in this description of King David. Speaking about him as a leader, as a judge, he wants them to listen. He doesn't want them to have any grievances. What's the idea of the Jewish people not having any grievances? I mean, have you ever heard, two people go into a din, they come into a din Torah, they want to be judged. One of them is going to come out happy. The other one's going to come out unhappy. That's just how it is. So what does it mean that no one should have any grievances? How is that possible? What does that mean? And what does it mean? Why is he asking that they should hear? What is the idea of hearing in this context? David HaMelech wants them to hear, to accept what he's saying. What is the idea of hearing? And again, how does it attach? How does it connect to the topic of brachos, the blessings that we're speaking about until now? King David said additionally, to see many l'resh goyim. Make me, it's also in the same verse, make me to be the head of the nations. Amar brechia, im dantes hagoy, ba hu meisercha lelaka. If you are the one who's judging the Jewish people, so you're going to be given over. Meaning they're going to say, there is no way out. If you're going to be judged, if you're going to be judging the Jewish people, they're going to ask God for the proper judgment. And the Medrash continues and says that indeed Hashem judges the judges. Those who are judging the Jewish people, they are held accountable for their judgments, which is also an interesting concept. We'll see how much we get into that, but we also need to understand what is the idea that there's an accountability. How, in this context, or how does it relate to what we're saying that there's an accountability? The judges are judged based on the fact that they're judging the Jewish people. They are held accountable for what they do, for what they say. So to understand what's going on here, the thought that I had here, the depth of the thought that I had here, is what is the idea of the man? Let's bring it back to the man. How do we access blessings? The man was something which was nisbarich b'me'ov, Chazal say. That when a person ate the manna, so if you would just eat manna, you wouldn't eat anything else. First of all, you eat a little bit and you feel full. You don't feel hungry anymore. You feel like you have what you need. That's what one of the amazing things of the manna. Besides to that, a person never had to use the bathroom. They were in the midbar for 40 years. If they only ate the manna, they did not have to use the facilities. The manna was a spiritual food that was completely nivla b'me'av, completely consumed within a person's innards. There was no refuse. There was no extra. There was nothing. That's the idea of blessing. Blessing is you have a little bit, becomes a lot. Tzadikim amar ma'at, loisim harbe. They say a little bit, they do a lot. Hashem says, I'm going to come with the name of 2 letters. I'm going to manifest with my 2-letter name. He manifests with the 72-letter name. And interestingly, even the 72-letter name is not just 72 letters, but it's 72 sets of 3-letter names. So even within the very name itself, there's a multiplicity. There's a deepening. There's a ribui. There's more and more. How does one access the blessings? How does one access the idea of the man? The idea of mizbarech b'me'av? He has what he needs. That person has what he needs. There's no refuse. There's no extra. It's exactly what he needs. How does a person access that blessing? How does a person access receiving more? What seems to be more? And I believe hidden inside of here is an amazing thing. And it has to do with the question that we asked. We said, what does it mean that Hashem did not want to reveal to Avram Avinu the idea of the man? Because the Jewish people would say, oh, we know about this from before. The man, what is the name of the man? As the Eitz Yosef points out, the man, the very name of the man expresses the fact that when the Jewish people saw it for the first time, they said, manhu, what is this? The word man means what? What is it? It was something which they had never heard of. It was something that they had never seen before. It was something that they couldn't conceive of. Can you imagine food that you eat a little bit and you feel full from eating a little bit? Can you imagine food that you eat and you never have to use the facilities after that? Amazing thing. What is this? That is the key, my friends. The key to bracha, the key to receiving blessings is the question. What is this? It's the humility. When the Jewish people say, oh, we remember how good it was in the old days when we were in Egypt. We had wonderful fish and we had melon. You remember how good it was in the old days when you were slaves and you had to make bricks and you didn't even have straw with which to make those bricks? That's the ultimate kfiyas toiv. It's the ultimate denial of the good. Hashem has taken you out of that place of the utter hardships, the ultimate hardships. And He's brought you to a place where all of your needs are taken care of. And all you can say is, oh, I remember those good old days when I had the fish and the melon. When the Medrash says that they would have said, if they knew about it, they would have said, I remember what we had this man in Pharaoh's palace. They weren't in the palace. In the times of Pharaoh in Egypt, the Medrash seems to be saying, as far as I understand it, that they would have said, if they would have known, if they would have had a Masorah, that they were going to receive the man, they would have said, oh, we know about this already. The yesod, the foundational idea of the man, is I don't know what it is. I've never heard of this before. How do I get into bracha? How do I get into blessings? How do I get into God's graces? I don't know about it. I've never heard of this. The question. Asking the question. I'm reading this Medrash and I'm trying to understand it. And I want to share with you a beautiful idea. But I don't know what the Medrash is saying. I don't see how the concept of the man connects to the concept of blessings. I don't see how King David, his idea of being the leader and not wanting them to judge him, I don't want to judge them. And I want them to hear what I'm saying. What does it mean? What is the connection? When I enter into a Medrash and I want to understand and I'm asking the questions, Manu, what is going on here? The question of Manu, I get into a place of humility. I get into a place where I don't know everything. It's not my ego. It's not, oh, I know it. I know all about this. Look how good things were before. What did you bring me to now? That's all ego. But the Medrash is telling us the path in is Manu. It's how. What is this? What is this? That's how I enter into blessings. Hashem starts off and says, I'm only going to reveal to you a 2-letter name. That's all. It sounds like a little bit. Tzaddikim, they speak a little bit and they do a lot. What is the idea? The idea is that in the speaking a little bit, in not making grandiose all the things that a person is planning or all the goodness that a person is doing, but rather speaking a little bit, there's a humility there. There's the question, what is it going to be? What's going to happen? Only a 2-letter name of Hashem, that's all that's going to be revealed? And in the end, because of the smallness, because of the humility that's expressed there, it opens up the possibility for a much greater revelation, for a much greater manifestation. That's the 72-letter name of Hashem. And that's the man. The Jewish people received the man because they didn't know about the man. They received the blessings because they didn't know about the blessings. Now, in trying to understand the connection to King David and his request that he not judge them, they not judge him, I think the key to it is in his asking, that they hear, that they listen to what he says. And the idea of listening is connected very much to the idea of blessings. How so? Because when I listen, as we've spoken about in the past, when I listen, so I hear one word, then another word, and then another word, and another word. And then we put all the words together and the concept comes together. But I hear it in pieces. Within the idea of hearing in pieces is that it's going to take time. There's humility in the fact that it takes time for me to get to the point. We're at 22 minutes and 52 seconds into this podcast. It's taken a long time for me to get to the point. But there's a humility in listening and waiting and asking questions and then trying to understand the answers. And that humility brings us to the answers. If the Jewish people can listen to King David, if they can hear with humility the fact that, yes, they have their understanding of reality. And as they come into a court and they say, this is my view, and the other person says, this is his view. Each person has their view, and there's a bigger picture that we're trying to understand by looking at all the views. If I can listen, if I can receive, if I can ask the question, if I can recognize that I don't know everything, then I can hear something beyond my perception. That's what King David was asking. He was saying, Hashem, put it in the hearts of these people that they be able to hear something beyond how they understand things. Let them hear. Let them hear. Let them not judge me because they recognize that I'm trying to see the bigger picture. Let them recognize that there is a bigger picture. Let them recognize, let them have the humility of manhu. What is it? What is the idea? If they can come in with that recognition, they won't have any grievances against me. And I won't have any grievances against them. And so that's the amazing thing. You have a blessing, and the blessing manifests greater and greater in the lives of the Jewish people. If they have that humility to ask manhu, what is it? To recognize that they don't know everything. They don't see everything. They don't have the full picture. They need to see a bigger picture. And I was thinking, the Medrash mentions the fact later on that the Jewish people are blessed to be like stars. Why like stars? And why not like the sun or like the moon? So the Medrash says because the sun and the moon are going to be darkened in the future time. But what's the idea? Why indeed are the sun and the moon darkened and not the stars? The reason is because the stars are small. There are many stars. Hashem manifests through the stars, as it says in Derech Hashem, the Ramchal speaks about. And Hashem manifests through all of the Jewish people. If there's only one great light that Hashem manifests through, so then it's not that level of humility. It's not that recognition that we need each other. When Hashem says, I'm manifesting through you like stars, where He's saying, each one of you is special. I need all of you to manifest in this world. And I need each and every individual to recognize that I need all of the stars in order to manifest my greatness in the world. So there's a humility that comes. There's a recognition of a greater picture. David HaMelech is asking for. King David is asking for. Moshe Rabbeinu, is asking for. And so that humility is represented in the stars. And that blessing comes about when we act like the stars. That blessing comes about when we say Manhu. What is it? We don't know everything. We don't have our ego getting in the way. The blessing comes when we start small. So you can ma'at, oisim harbe. They do a lot. Hashem should bless us. Hashem should help me. I ask you to bless me, and I'm blessing you. Hashem should help us to recognize this lesson, to internalize the lesson of Manhu. How can we understand? Recognize that we don't know everything. Recognize that we're a piece of a greater whole. And indeed, Hashem should pour out His blessings, and we should be zeicha. We should merit to see the day. The blessings are so great that we continue to say, Hashem, thank you for the blessings. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.